From the Podwires newsroom at podwires.com.
Today's deep dive, we're going to unpack how those sonic worlds we love, podcasts, radio, all of it are transforming. And get this, it directly impacts you.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking like crazy creative explosions, AI is becoming a big deal, and even how listening itself, that's being redefined.
Yeah.
Put your headphones on.
It's wild. What we're seeing is like this perfect storm.
Okay.
All these trends are converging. And it's not just about the tech getting better, though that's huge.
Right.
It's how all these advancements change creative strategies. How do we even measure if people are listening? And the whole experience of listening is different.
Okay, let's unpack that. So one of the things that jumped out from all these reports you shared is this emphasis on good vibes. It's like everyone just wants to feel good and have a laugh.
Yeah.
And audio creators, they're stepping up.
It makes sense, though, right? I mean, the world feels kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
So people want content that makes them feel good, gives them a break. But it's not just escapism, though. Positive emotions, they actually change how we connect with brands and content. It's a strategy.
It's that whole, people might forget what you said,
Yeah.
but they won't forget how you made them feel thing.
Exactly, yeah.
And speaking of memorable, one report,
Yeah.
it was highlighting this resurgence of emotionally driven audio ads.
Oh, interesting.
You know, like those old school radio ads
Yeah.
with jingles and characters, they're making a comeback.
It makes sense if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Our brains, you're wired to respond to emotion. So when an ad makes you laugh, maybe tugs at your heartstrings a bit, it creates this good feeling you associate with that brand. Way stronger than just listing off facts.
Right.
They've done studies, emotionally resonant ads. People remember those way more. They actually work better than just dry, fact-based ones.
Totally. It's like that campaign you were talking about, the one with the talking dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, pure entertainment.
Yeah.
But I bet you remember that brand.
Oh, for sure. And it's not always humor either. Authenticity is huge. The reports are saying brands are investing big time in long-term partnerships with creators who really connect with their audience. It's about trust and being relatable.
Right. Because who wants to be bombarded with sales pitches all the time?
Right.
Especially from people you don't even like.
Exactly.
If my favorite podcaster is recommending something they genuinely seem to love, I'm way more likely to check it out.
It's true. There was this research study. Almost all consumers said authenticity is a major factor in choosing a brand. It's that human connection.
Yeah.
Hard to fake that.
Yeah.
But, you know, while we're all feeling good and connecting, there's another side to this, the business side of audio. That's having some major shifts, too.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. What's changing behind the scenes?
All right, let's talk about how we even measure if a podcast or radio show is successful.
Okay.
Traditionally, it was all about listener numbers. Who tuned in for at least 5 minutes?
Right.
Now, imagine that shrinking to just 3 minutes. Big difference.
So they're like moving the goalpost. Does that mean those numbers were always bogus?
It's not about being bogus. It's about adapting. How we listen today is different. Are bombarded with content.
Constantly.
3 minutes? That's actually a realistic look at engagement in this crazy, fast-paced world.
Okay.
It also matches how digital platforms already work. Makes comparing across media way more accurate.
That's a really interesting point.
Right.
So even if we're technically listening for a shorter amount of time, a shorter measurement window could mean that people listening are actually more tuned in.
Exactly.
It could totally change the whole industry.
Yeah.
But speaking of changing the game, what about AI? It's everywhere these days. So how's that impacting the audio world?
It's changing it fast. But not in a robots are stealing our jobs kind of way.
Okay.
More like AI is a super powerful tool, both for the people making audio and for advertisers. They can optimize content, personalize the experience, and reach the right listeners at the perfect time.
So less robots stealing the mic, more like smart assistants helping us find our new favorite podcast.
Exactly.
I like the sound of that.
So, for example, AI can look at tons of data to figure out who's most likely to enjoy, maybe even buy from a particular ad.
Okay, that's pretty slick. So instead of those ads that make you want to rip your ears out,
Right.
we'll start hearing ones tailored to our interests. That's a win.
Yeah.
But what about AI actually generating voices? I keep hearing about these crazy realistic AI voiceovers. Does that mean our favorite podcast hosts are out of a job?
Not at all. AI voices are getting good, crazy good.
Yeah.
But nothing can replace a real human connection, that trust you build with a host's voice.
Right.
You listen to your favorite podcast because you connect with the host's personalities, their humor, what they bring to it.
Right. Yeah.
AI can't fake that human touch.
True. I can't imagine my favorite true crime podcast hosted by a robot. This wouldn't be the same.
Exactly. AI can help with stuff like generating different versions of an ad to test, but the creativity, the storytelling, that's human. It's about finding the balance, using AI to make things better, not erase what makes audio so powerful in the first place.
So it sounds like AI will be working behind the scenes mostly.
Yeah.
But what about its impact on us, the listeners? Any cool AI-powered features on the horizon we can look forward to?
Absolutely. One area that's blowing up right now. Personalized content recommendations. Imagine your podcast app. It doesn't just know what genres you like.
Right.
It suggests new shows based on your listening history, what kind of mood you're in, maybe even the time of day.
Wow. It's like having a personal podcast DJ.
Right.
Crafting the perfect listening experience just for you. Are there any other AI-powered features coming down the pike that you're excited about?
Oh, yeah, there's a big one. Dynamic AI contextual ads specifically for podcasts.
Good.
This means instead of those generic ads, you'll hear what's directly related to what you're listening to at that moment.
So if I'm listening to a podcast, say, about sustainable living, I might hear ads for, like, eco-friendly products or services.
Okay.
That makes way more sense than the random stuff you usually get.
Right. And AI can actually analyze the conversation, the tone, the specific things you guys are talking about to make ads feel less like interruptions, more like a natural part of what you're already listening to.
So win-win. More relevant ads for me and the advertisers get better engagement.
Exactly.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But with all this AI stuff, it makes you wonder about, the ethical side of things. How do we make sure AI is being used responsibly, especially with data privacy and potential bias?
You're hitting on something super important. As AI gets more ingrained in the audio world, we have to have these conversations about the ethics.
Yeah.
Transparency is key. Being upfront about how AI is being used, making sure data is collected responsibly, and constantly checking for biases and algorithms, all that is critical.
So it sounds pretty complex, which it is, but at least people are talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. Shifting gears a bit here. Those reports also highlighted some big changes in audience measurement, especially for podcasts.
Right.
Seems like we're moving beyond just those simple download numbers.
We are. It used to be podcast measurement was all about downloads, which doesn't really tell you the whole story.
Right.
Now we've got these more sophisticated models popping up. They give a much clearer understanding of how listeners are actually interacting with ads and if those interactions mean anything for advertisers, actual results.
So instead of just knowing someone downloaded an episode, advertisers will know if people actually listened to their ad, maybe even visited their website or bought something.
You got it. It's a game changer.
That's huge for podcasters.
Huge. Advertisers get more accurate and usable data.
Right.
So they can make smarter choices about where to spend their money, which means potentially higher ad revenue for the people making podcasts.
That's fantastic. But how did these new models actually work? Is it some super secret spy tech that tracks every time we listen to something?
It's not top secret, but it does involve some pretty cool tech.
Okay.
Stuff like audio watermarking and pixel tracking.
Okay.
These technologies can connect the dots between when you hear a podcast ad and what you do after. Like if you go to their website, it paints a much clearer picture.
So let me get this straight. If I hear an ad on my go-to podcast and later that day I buy something from them, these models can track that whole thing.
Exactly. It's not just about the initial listen, it's about the impact. That level of transparency and accountability, that's what builds trust with advertisers. It proves that podcasting is a valuable way to market your stuff.
It is amazing how much data is out there these days. Speaking of data, reaching specific people, one thing that caught my eye was fandom targeting. Sounds kind of cool and creepy at the same time. What's that all about?
Fandom targeting, it's all about those diehard communities built around shared interests, hobbies, even specific people. It recognizes that fandom is a powerful thing. It can drive how people spend their money. And advertisers are paying attention.
So instead of targeting like age groups or where someone lives, they're focusing on shared passions.
That's it. Think about it. Someone who's a super fan of something is way more likely to be into messages about that thing, trust recommendations from people within that world, even spend money on stuff related to their fandom.
Totally makes sense. I'm way more likely to notice an ad for something related to my favorite band than like a random product I've never heard of.
Exactly.
But how are they even reaching these niche groups? Is it like special podcasts or social media groups?
It's kind of multi-pronged. One way is to partner with influencers who have a big following within that specific fandom.
Okay.
These influencers can work brand messages into their content organically.
Makes sense. Like when your favorite gaming YouTuber recommends a new headset, you trust their opinion because they're plugged into that world.
Exactly. Another tactic is using data to identify and target fans across different platforms. Social media listening tools, those can track conversations, figure out who the key voices are in a fandom, provides really valuable info.
It sounds like the key to fandom targeting is speaking the language of a specific community.
Yeah.
But does it actually work? Are advertisers seeing results?
Yeah, the numbers are impressive.
Yeah.
Studies show that when you compare fandom-targeted campaigns to more generic ones, engagement is higher, people remember the brand more, and sales go up.
Interesting.
Fans are simply more invested when the message aligns with what they're passionate about. It makes them a really valuable audience.
Fascinating how these little pockets of enthusiasm are now being harnessed. Speaking of specific groups, those reports also talked about catering to Gen Alpha.
Right.
I've heard they're a tough crowd to please.
Gen Alpha, those are the folks born after 2010. They really are a different breed. Growing up immersed in tech and digital media, they just have different expectations.
Yeah, stuff like traditional ads, those probably don't work so well. They want everything digital first, right?
Absolutely. This generation, smartphones, tablets, streaming, that's all they've ever known. They're tech savvy, they know what they want, and they're experts at tuning out anything irrelevant.
With so many choices, it must be incredibly hard to get their attention.
It's a challenge for sure.
So what's the secret?
Authenticity, that's huge.
Okay.
And being relatable, Gen Alpha can sniff out a fake from a mile away.
Right.
They want brands that are transparent, care about social issues, and reflect their values. They also really dig interactive, personalized experiences.
So things like interactive games, personalized recommendations, and content that actually speaks to their interests and what they care about.
You got it. And you can't forget about voice technology. They've grown up with smart speakers, voice assistants, so using voice commands for everything feels natural to them.
Totally. It's second nature to them.
Right.
So are we talking about like creating audio experiences specifically for smart speakers and voice assistants to reach them?
Exactly. Think interactive audio stories, personalized playlists, educational content delivered through these devices. It's about meeting them where they are.
Right.
Engaging with them in a way that feels natural.
So reaching Gen Alpha effectively means advertisers need to seriously rethink how they do things.
They do, but the payoff is huge.
Right.
Gen Alpha, they're a massive market with a lot of buying power in the future. If you can build brand loyalty now, it'll pay off big time later on.
It's a whole new world of possibilities for marketing.
It is.
But it's not just about targeting specific generations, right?
Right.
The reports also said it's super important to cater to niche interests and those smaller, tighter communities.
Yeah.
Not just generations as a whole.
You got it. Mass marketing, trying to appeal to everyone, those days are gone.
Right.
Today's consumer, no matter how old they are, they want personalized stuff, content that vibes with their interests and what they're into.
So we're shifting away from those broad demographics and homing in on these micro communities instead.
Precisely. With social media, forums, niche podcasts, people are connecting with others who get them no matter where they are in the world.
Pretty amazing how technology has broken down all those old barriers.
It has.
People can connect with like-minded people no matter where they live.
Yeah.
But how are advertisers even starting to tap into these micro communities? Seems almost impossible.
It definitely needs a more nuanced touch, something that's less intrusive and more about becoming a part of the group.
Okay.
Instead of those generic messages blasted out to everyone, brands need to find genuine ways to join the conversation, to be a part of the communities where their target audience already is.
So less about shouting from the rooftops and more about whispering in the right ears.
You got it. Partnering with micro-influencers, that's one really good way to do this.
Okay.
These are folks with a dedicated following within a specific niche.
Right.
They've built trust and credibility because they're already a part of that world.
Right. It's like getting a recommendation from a friend who shares your passion, whether it's like vintage comic books or craft beer.
Exactly.
It's going to mean a lot more than some random ad that doesn't get you at all.
Totally. Another good approach is to create content specifically designed for those niche interests and values.
So a brand targeting outdoor enthusiasts might create a podcast about, like, the best hiking trails.
Exactly. Or maybe they host a webinar with a famous wilderness expert.
Right.
It's about bringing something valuable to the table, building relationships, and establishing your brand as a trusted source within those communities.
Which seems a lot more authentic than just trying to appeal to everybody.
It is. Consumers are bombarded with messages. It's a totally fragmented media landscape. So focusing on authenticity, personalization, community building, that's more important now than ever.
It's amazing how much the audio world is changing to meet these new demands. Speaking of evolution, the report also dug into some cool developments in ad tech,
Oh, yeah.
especially in personalization and dynamic creative optimization.
Right. It's a total game changer. We're done with the one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
Now it's all about tailoring audio ads to individual listeners in real time based on all sorts of factors.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this personalized audio ad magic.
Imagine listening to your go-to podcast, right?
Okay, yeah.
Instead of some generic ad, you hear one tailored to what you into, your demographics, even where you are at that moment.
So if I'm listening to a travel podcast and I recently searched online for flights to Rome, I might hear an ad for a travel agency that specializes in Italian vacations.
Exactly. That's the power of it. Using data and AI, advertisers can really target their messages precisely.
It sounds crazy effective, but is it like listening to my conversations, tracking my every move online?
Thankfully, it's not that creepy. It uses a bunch of different data points. Your listening history,
Right.
device info, location data, and some online behavior stuff. But it's all aggregated and anonymized, so your personal info is protected.
So it's not like they know everything about me,
Yeah.
but more about my preferences and habits as a consumer.
Exactly. They take this data,
Okay.
and they can make different versions of the same ad, tweaking the message, the music, even who's doing the voiceover, all to match specific types of listeners.
That's wild. It's like having a whole team dedicated to making the perfect ad just for me.
Yeah.
But seriously, with all this talk about data and personalization, how do we know our privacy is actually safe?
You're right to ask that. Anytime you have powerful tech, there's potential for misuse. That's why the audio industry needs to set clear ethical rules and best practices for data collection, how it's used, and being transparent about it all.
So getting people's permission before collecting their data, making sure it's stored securely and used responsibly, and giving listeners control over their own privacy settings.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just following the rules. It's about building trust. Listeners need to feel like their privacy is respected and they're getting something valuable in return for their data.
Because if they feel like they're being spied on, that's going to backfire big time.
Big time. That's why transparency and ethical data practices are so important. When it's done right, personalized audio ads can actually make things better for everyone.
Yeah.
Consumers get fewer irrelevant ads and more stuff they actually care about. And brands, they reach the right people at the right time with the right message, which is the whole point.
Everybody wins.
Mhm.
But as we dig into this constantly changing audio world, I'm curious about good old-fashioned radio. How's it holding up with all these streaming services and on-demand podcasts everywhere?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
Even with all the new audio platforms, radio is still a powerhouse. Recent studies show it's got a huge audience. Millions still tune in every single day for news, music, you name it.
That's good to hear. But how's it adapting to compete with streaming services? That convenience, the personalization, radio has to keep up.
It does. One big way is embracing the digital world. Lots of stations now offer live streams online and through apps, so people can tune in from anywhere.
They're not limited by geography anymore. That changes everything.
Totally. And it goes beyond just streaming.
Right.
Stations are creating podcasts to go along with their shows,
Okay.
expanding what they offer, and connecting with listeners on social media and other digital channels.
So it's about creating this multi-platform experience, something that builds on what they're already doing on the radio.
Exactly.
Smart.
Radio is also using tech to make listening better, more personalized. Some stations are trying out custom playlists, interactive stuff, even targeted ads based on what people like.
So radio's taking notes from the digital playbook and innovating.
They have to.
But what about the actual content?
Mm-hmm.
Are they sticking with the classics? Or are there new, innovative shows popping up?
The classics, like music radio and talk shows, those are always going to be popular.
Right.
But there's definitely a wave of new creative stuff coming out, too. Podcast-style storytelling, shows for very specific interests, even live interactive shows are gaining traction.
It's great that radio is embracing new ideas and pushing boundaries. But with everything changing so fast, what are the biggest hurdles radio faces in the next few years?
The biggest one, staying relevant in a media landscape that's more fragmented than ever.
Right.
You've got tons of platforms and content fighting for attention, so radio can't just keep doing the same old thing.
They've got to keep evolving.
Exactly. Keep listeners engaged.
Right.
But that's also where the opportunity is. By embracing digital, trying new formats, and using tech for personalization, radio can totally thrive in this digital world.
It's a wild time to be into audio. And speaking of exciting stuff, one trend that caught my eye is the rise of what they're calling hyper-niche content. It's like niche on another level.
Hyper-niche content, it zeroes in on those extremely specific interests, those passions that only a small group of people really get.
Right.
We're talking podcasts about obscure hobbies, local history podcasts about a single neighborhood, or shows for really, really specific jobs.
So instead of a podcast about, say, filmmaking in general, it's a podcast specifically about the history of stop-motion animation.
Exactly. It's not about appealing to everyone. It's about going deep and finding those small, super engaged audiences that are crazy passionate about that one thing.
It's like finding your tribe, even if it's a tribe of, like, vintage board game collectors or people who are obsessed with solving Rubik's Cubes.
Exactly. And a few things are driving this. First, it's never been easier to create and share your own audio content.
Right.
Platforms like YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anyone with a microphone and internet can get their voice out there.
It's like audio for everyone.
It is. No more gatekeepers.
Right.
Second, people want content that lines up with their very specific interests.
Of course.
Generic stuff just doesn't cut it anymore.
It's like the difference between shopping at a huge department store versus finding that little boutique that gets your unique style.
Perfect analogy. And third, this hyper-niche stuff, it's often easier to make money from.
Really?
Think subscriptions, memberships, direct sales.
Okay, so you could have a podcaster with a dedicated following of, say, antique camera buffs.
Right.
They might offer bonus content or early access to sales for their paying members.
Exactly. It's a model that works, lets people turn their passion into a living.
It's pretty cool that these hyper-specific things can find an audience and even become profitable.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about making audio accessible to everyone, those reports also stressed how important accessibility features are.
They're critical. Accessibility means making sure everyone can enjoy audio, no matter their physical abilities or disabilities.
Right.
Providing transcripts for podcasts, adding descriptions for the visually impaired, making sure audio players and platforms are easy to use for people with motor impairments. It all matters.
It's about leveling the playing field, making sure everyone can experience the power of audio, no matter their physical limitations.
Exactly. And this is important for a few big reasons. The biggest one, it's just the right thing to do. Everyone deserves access to information and entertainment.
Absolutely. It's about making audio inclusive and equitable for everyone.
Exactly. Second, more and more people are realizing how important accessibility is from both a moral and legal standpoint.
Yeah.
Many countries have laws now about digital content being accessible.
So it's not just the nice bonus anymore. It's something creators and platforms need to do if they want to reach the biggest audience possible and avoid legal trouble.
Exactly. And third, get this, making content accessible actually makes the listening experience better for everyone, not just people with disabilities.
Really? That's interesting. Tell me more.
Take transcripts, for example. They're great for folks who are deaf or hard of hearing,
Right.
but they also make it way easier for everyone else to search for specific info, really study the content, or even translate it.
It's like subtitles for a movie.
Exactly.
They're helpful even if you don't absolutely need them.
Exactly. It's the same with audio descriptions. They can help people who can see, but maybe they're doing something else while they listen, or they're in a loud spot.
Makes sense. By giving people different ways to engage with content, you create a better experience overall.
You do.
But how are creators and platforms actually making their stuff more accessible? What tools or technology are they using?
Lots of stuff. Audio players and platforms need to be designed with accessibility in mind from the start. So that means things like keyboard navigation, making sure it works with screen readers, and letting people customize things like font sizes and colors.
So it's a smooth experience for everyone.
Exactly. Transcripts and captions are also key, like we said.
Right.
Transcripts help a wider audience. And with speech-to-text tech getting so good, creating accurate, affordable transcripts is easier than ever.
That's great to hear. Are there other tools that are making a difference?
AI is starting to be used to create audio descriptions,
Wow.
which used to be really time-consuming and expensive to do. AI can automate that whole process, making it faster, cheaper, and available to way more creators.
That's amazing. Sounds like AI is really pushing things forward when it comes to accessibility.
It's got huge potential to change the game. As AI gets smarter and more available, we'll see even more creative ways to make audio accessible for everyone.
That's a future I can get behind.
Right.
But even with all the amazing technology, we can't forget about the human side of audio.
Right.
What role do you see creativity, human connection, and good old-fashioned storytelling playing as audio continues to evolve?
That's something I think about a lot. Technology is changing things like crazy, but the human element, that'll always be what makes audio so powerful and captivating.
It's those voices, those human stories, the connection you feel. That's what keeps people listening.
That's it. Technology can't replace the nuance, the empathy, all the emotional depth that humans bring to telling a story.
Think about the difference between, like, a robot reading the news and a seasoned journalist who's passionate and insightful.
Right.
Both are giving you information, but the impact is night and day.
Huge difference. The human voice conveys emotion. It makes you feel like you're right there with them, pulls you in. That creates this intimate, immersive experience that tech alone just can't replicate.
It's like the difference between getting a text and having a face-to-face conversation.
Exactly. And that human element is going to be even more important as audio keeps changing. We're surrounded by tech and AI, so that genuine human connection, we crave that more than ever.
It's like wanting something handcrafted in a world of mass production.
Yeah.
That human touch, it just hits different.
It does, and audio is the perfect way to create that connection.
It is.
Whether it's a podcast, music, the spoken word audio can transport you, create a connection, make you feel things in a way other mediums just can't.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Even with all the advancements, that human element, that's at the core of what makes audio so special.
It is. As we explore this crazy new audio landscape,
Right.
we've got to remember that human element and make sure tech is enhancing it, not replacing it.
Couldn't agree more. Now, speaking of storytelling, one trend that's been popping up is the rise of branded podcasts.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those?
Branded podcasts, when done right, they're a goldmine. Companies, organizations, they can connect with their audience in a way that feels real, way more engaging than just ads.
So they're creating something people actually want to listen to.
Right.
Instead of just interrupting them with ads, they might tune out anyway.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, when done well, they work.
Yeah.
Brands can show off what they know, share their stories, and build relationships with listeners without being pushy.
It's like you're inviting your customers into a conversation about something they're already into.
That's a great way to put it. And people are usually more tuned in when listening to podcasts
Right.
compared to other media.
It's not like scrolling past an ad or fast-forwarding through commercials.
Yeah.
Listeners are choosing to spend time with this.
Exactly. And that attention leads to real results. We've seen studies, branded podcasts can make people more aware of a brand, make them see it more favorably, even make them more likely to buy something.
That just goes to show how powerful audio storytelling can be.
It is.
But with everyone jumping on the bandwagon these days, what's the secret sauce? What makes a branded podcast successful?
First things first, you got to know your audience, what they're into.
Right. You wouldn't create a podcast about competitive knitting if you're trying to reach teenagers who love video games.
Exactly. You got to find that sweet spot where your brand and your audience's interests meet.
Right.
Once you know your audience, then you need a solid concept and format. Pick a topic that's relevant to your brand and that your audience will actually find interesting, something you can talk about for several episodes.
Right.
And don't be afraid to try different things.
Okay.
Some brands do interviews, others tell stories, some focus on education or give you a behind-the-scenes look at their company.
It's about finding what feels right for the brand and what will click with the people they're trying to reach.
Exactly.
Oh.
Authenticity is key.
Okay.
People can smell a sales pitch a mile away.
Right.
So approach your podcast with real enthusiasm, really wanting to offer something valuable to your listeners.
It's the difference between a pushy salesperson and a friend giving you a genuine recommendation.
Exactly. Focus on high-quality content, informative, entertaining, inspiring, and let your brand message be a natural part of that.
It's about building trust and connecting with your listeners, just like any other relationship.
Absolutely. And don't skimp on production value.
Right.
Listeners are way more likely to stick around if your podcast sounds professional.
Investing in good equipment, editing software, maybe even some original music or sound design can make a big difference.
Huge! Your podcast is representing your brand.
Right.
First impressions matter.
They do. So a successful branded podcast requires a balancing act of creativity, strategy, and being real.
You got it. But if brands put in the work, the payoff is there. A well-made branded podcast builds brand awareness, customer loyalty, and drives sales.
It really is a powerful way to connect. Speaking of which, one trend that's generating a lot of buzz is the use of interactive features and personalized experiences.
It's huge right now. We're moving beyond just passively listening and entering a world where listeners can actually engage with audio in new, really immersive ways.
It's crazy how far we've come from traditional radio. Back then, listeners just absorbed information.
I know, right?
Now it's all about podcasts, streaming, voice-activated devices.
Exactly.
It's a whole new world.
It is. And a few things are driving this move towards making things more interactive. You've got advances in tech, of course.
Right.
Listener expectations are different, and everyone wants a personalized experience.
What are some examples of these interactive audio experiences? Are we talking choose your own adventure podcasts or maybe virtual reality audio tours?
The sky's the limit.
Whoa.
One popular one is using polls and surveys right in the middle of a podcast.
Oh, wow. Listeners can give feedback live, which can actually change how the show goes, even what they talk about in future episodes.
It's like having a live focus group right there in your ear.
It is.
What a great way to get people involved.
It is, and listeners love feeling like they're a part of it. Another cool development is using voice commands and smart assistants.
Okay.
So imagine listening to a podcast about cooking and a recipe catches your ear. You can just say, "Hey, Alexa, save that recipe," and bam, it's in your digital recipe box.
No, that's convenient.
Right.
Fits right into our lives.
It does. Voice tech opens up so many possibilities. Interactive storytelling, personalized recommendations, even interactive audio games.
So instead of just listening to a story, I could actually change what happens, talk to the characters, even solve puzzles using just my voice.
Exactly. It's blurring the lines. You're not just passively listening anymore.
Right.
You're a part of it. Way more immersive, way more engaging.
Technology is changing how we experience sound in some crazy ways. It's mind-blowing, and we're just getting started. As tech gets even better, we can expect more innovative, more immersive experiences, stuff that blends the real world and the digital world.
It's a wild time to have ears.
It is.
But as cool as all this innovation is, it's important to remember it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right.
There are some downsides too.
Definitely. We've talked about a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also important to be real about the challenges.
Like what?
Well, misinformation, harmful content spreading through audio, that's a growing problem.
It is, unfortunately.
The same tech that lets us create and share so easily also makes it easier for bad information to spread like wildfire.
It's like the double-edged sword of technology.
It is. The audio industry needs to get ahead of this, develop some ethical guidelines and tech solutions to fight it.
So promoting media literacy, fact-checking, and maybe even algorithms that can spot and flag potentially harmful stuff.
Exactly. Another challenge is making sure creators are being paid fairly,
Right.
especially with so much competition now.
It does seem like the way...
It does seem like the way people make money from audio is still a work in progress.
Right. And not everyone's getting a fair shake.
Exactly. Platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, they've made it way easier to reach a bigger audience.
Right.
But how they divvy up the money, it's complicated. And the big players often come out on top. We got to find ways to support those independent creators, the little guys.
Absolutely. For the good of the whole audio ecosystem.
Right. It's about making sure everyone has a chance to succeed, the established voices and the up-and-comers.
I'm with you there. And of course, we can't forget about that ongoing debate around data privacy and AI being used ethically, especially in audio.
Right.
It's
yeah.
like the Wild West out there, always changing.
Yeah.
We've got to keep talking about how to strike that balance between personalization and privacy.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's about using tech responsibly,
Yeah.
making sure we're sticking to ethical standards, and looking out for both the creators and the listeners.
We've all got a part to play. And while we're talking about responsibility, how about the environmental impact of this whole audio shebang?
Yeah, that's a real thing.
It's easy to forget about it when you're excited about new gadgets and cool tech.
It is. Streaming services use energy. Old devices become e-waste. The audio industry has a footprint for sure.
Right.
But people care about the environment now, so the audio industry needs to make sustainability a priority.
So we're talking about energy-efficient devices, eco-friendly streaming tech, maybe even finding new materials for manufacturing that are easier on the planet.
All of that. We got to minimize our impact, and those are important steps.
They are. It's clear that the audio world is changing fast, full of amazing potential, but definitely with some bumps in the road.
It is.
What excites you the most about the future of audio?
You know, for me, it's the potential for audio to bring people together, to build bridges in a world that feels increasingly divided.
That's a powerful thought. How do you see audio doing that?
Audio is amazing at creating empathy. When you hear someone's story, especially through headphones, it's like you're right there with them. You step into their shoes, if even for a little bit.
It's like getting a glimpse into someone else's world, their experiences.
Exactly. And that shared experience, that feeling of connection, it's incredibly powerful. It can break down walls between people, challenge our biases, and help us see each other as human beings.
We might come from different places, have different beliefs, but we all share that common human experience.
That's it. And as audio keeps evolving, I'm hopeful that we can use its power to create a world with more empathy, more understanding.
I love that vision for the future. Speaking of the future, the report also mentions something that sounds straight out of sci-fi. Immersive audio tech, like binaural audio and spatial sound.
Oh yeah, that stuff is next level.
It is.
It's like they're rewriting the rules of what we thought was possible with sound, creating these crazy, realistic, immersive experiences.
I've heard the term binaural audio thrown around, but I'll admit I'm a little fuzzy on what it actually is. Break it down for me.
So binaural audio, spatial sound, they try to make listening more real, more immersive. They do it by mimicking how our ears naturally hear sound.
Okay. So instead of just stereo, which is really just left and right channels,
Right.
binaural audio makes your brain think the sound is coming from all around you.
Exactly. It recreates that 3D soundscape we get in the real world where sounds seem like they're coming from above, below, behind, even inside your head.
That's wild. It'd be like being in the recording studio or at a live concert.
Exactly. And because it's so immersive, it's perfect for so many things like music, gaming, VR, even therapy.
So I could listen to a binaural recording of a rainstorm and feel like I'm actually standing outside in it.
Totally. Or picture this. You're playing a video game, right? Spatial audio lets you hear an enemy creeping up behind you, gives you a real advantage.
That's insane. It's like audio on another level. But do I need like special equipment for that?
That's the cool part. You don't need anything fancy, just your regular headphones.
Seriously?
Yep. Binaural recordings use a special mic that acts like your ears with the same spacing and everything. When you listen through headphones, it tricks your brain.
That's so cool. Okay, now what about spatial audio? Is that the same thing as binaural or is it something else?
They both want to create that immersive experience,
Right.
but spatial audio is more of an umbrella term. It covers a bunch of different technologies and techniques.
Okay.
Binaural is one type of spatial audio, but there are others, like object-based audio, ambisonic audio. They all create that 3D effect.
It's like a whole family of immersive audio technologies all doing their thing.
Exactly. And as this tech gets better and easier to get, we're going to see some seriously cool applications, stuff that will change how we experience sound every day.
I can't wait. And this ties into one of the biggest shifts in audio, the rise of independent creators. Audio production is for everyone now.
It really is. It's a whole new ballgame.
It is.
Independent creators, smaller studios, they're finally getting the recognition and resources they deserve.
It's like those old gatekeepers don't hold all the cards anymore.
No.
There are all these new voices, fresh perspectives, flooding the airwaves.
I love it. The playing field is leveling for sure. Creating and sharing amazing audio is easier than ever. Better tech, online platforms. Plus, people are hungry for different voices, different stories.
It's a golden age for audio, wouldn't you say?
It really is. And all this is leading to crazy creativity and innovation.
Right.
New, exciting podcasts are popping up left and right, same with music, all kinds of audio experiences, stuff that might never have seen the light of day under the old system.
It's definitely a great time to be a listener. But with so much out there, what does this shift towards independent creators really mean for the future of audio?
More voices, more experimentation.
I like it.
It's going to be a much richer experience for everyone. Independent creators, they're the ones willing to take chances, to try new things, to explore those niche interests that bigger companies might not touch.
It's about passion projects finding their people.
Exactly. And as this keeps going, we'll see more innovation in the content itself and how it's delivered.
Definitely.
New genres could pop up, new ways of telling stories, new ways of connecting with listeners.
It's like a whole world of audio possibilities just waiting to be discovered. But while we're on the topic of possibilities, we got to talk about the algorithm in the room.
Yeah.
All this personalization, the targeted ads, is there a risk we'll end up only hearing what we already like, stuck in an echo chamber of our own taste?
It's a real danger, something we have to be aware of.
Yeah.
Algorithms, they're only as smart as the information we feed them.
Right.
If we're not careful, they can trap us, feeding us more of the same and limiting us from new ideas.
So how do we avoid that? How do we keep our listening fresh and diverse, even with all this personalization?
It takes effort from both sides, the listeners and the creators. Listeners, we got to be open to new things. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone, try a new genre, seek out different voices, and question your own biases.
Don't be afraid to hit that shuffle button once in a while.
Exactly. And creators, we got to be aware of how algorithms can create those echo chambers. We need to design them to be fair, transparent, and promote diversity. We've got to amplify those voices that don't always get heard, shake things up a bit.
So it's about making audio more inclusive for everyone, listeners and creators.
Absolutely. That's something worth fighting for. Audio has this incredible power to bring people together, to help us understand each other, to open our minds. Let's make sure we're using it to its full potential.
Couldn't agree more. That's an awesome call to action. As we wrap up our deep dive into this ever-changing world of audio, any final thoughts you want to leave with our listeners?
Keep your ears open and be adventurous. The future of audio is wide open, shaped by the folks creating it and the folks listening. So enjoy the ride, discover new sounds, let your ears be your guide.
Love it. Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible journey through the world of audio. Eye-opening, or should I say ear-opening.
It was my pleasure. Until next time, happy listening, everyone.
This episode is brought to you by Podwire's Marketplace, the best platform for finding top podcast service providers and podcast producers. We've selected the best, and we're ready to make your project ideas a reality, no matter the size. We will achieve your business goals together. Find podcast experts who understand your market and will help you grow your business. Learn more right now on the homepage, https://marketplace.podwires.com.